Greetings and welcome again to our 5-week study in Exodus, into, through, and out of the wilderness. I'm Paul Pedersen, pastor serving Normandale Lutheran Church in Edina. I'm glad to be with you for this journey we have together. In week 1, we looked at the entrance into the wilderness. The people have made it through the Red Sea. They've been set free from slavery in Egypt. They're singing a song of triumph as they enter the wilderness, only to realize basic life is not present, no water, but God brings forth water from a rock. Then there's no nutrition, but God sends manna and quail from heaven. And how are they to be as a people of God? How are they to be a community built on what God desires for them? So God sends a new covenant, what we call the 10 Commandments, guardrails, if you will, as to how they will be together and serve one another. And now today we take a look at another movement through the wilderness, trouble in the wilderness. There has been a thread that has weaved its way to this point in the book of Exodus, a liturgical movement, if you will. A problem arises. The people complain. Moses intercedes, and God responds with deliverance. And so, we learn today in chapters 32 through 34 of Exodus, and then Moses delayed to come down the mountain. The people gather around Aaron and demand that you would make gods for us. For this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we don't know what's become of him. And so in Moses' absence, no one is there to intercede, and the people choose disaster over endurance, chaos over faithfulness, death over life. Through all of the murmuring, all of the complaint, all of the struggle, God has managed to patch together just enough providence to sustain them. But in Moses' absence, the people forget the former things, the ways in which God had brought forth water from a rock and manna from heaven. And so the people who were becoming a people invite their own demise. Like adolescents without a rudder, the people gather their treasures to craft an idol, breaking the first and central commandment of the covenant: you shall have no other gods before me. The people are ungrateful and disloyal, testing the divine blessing and graciousness of Yahweh, stretching divine mercy to its breaking, and the resulting dialogue between Yahweh and Moses reaches a new height of intimacy and challenge. Looking at chapter 32, verses 7 through 14, we read, "The Lord said to Moses, go down at once. Your people," like one parent saying to the other, "your child, your people whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt have acted perversely." This is the Lord speaking to Moses. "They've been quick to turn aside from the way I commanded them. They've cast for themselves an image of a calf and have worshiped it and sacrificed to it and said, 'These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt.'" And then Yahweh says to Moses, "I've seen this people, how stiff-necked they are. Now let me alone." I love that line. Yahweh says to Moses, "Let me alone, so that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and of you, Moses, I will make of a great nation." There is serious trouble in the wilderness. And then, while they stay away from the people, Moses stays away from the people up on the mountain with Yahweh. Moses intercedes right there in greater measure than anything previous, recognizing all that is at stake. And honestly, Moses just seems fed up with this dance of mediation between Yahweh and Yahweh's people, not his people. And Moses implores Yahweh, saying, "What are you so upset about? You're the one who brought this people up out of the land of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand. Remember, I was the one who didn't even want this job, but you insisted, saying you would provide everything I would need, even the words for my tongue or Aaron to speak for me. And so here we are. And what will the Egyptians think when they learn that our God just brought us up out of slavery in order to wipe us from the face of the earth? Remember who you are, Yahweh. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember your promise to give them descendants, to make of them a great people, and to give them the land that they shall inherit. For crying out loud, Yahweh, you swore this by your own self. And a remarkable thing happened. Hear this understanding of the relationship between Yahweh and Moses, Yahweh and the people. Chapter 32, verse 14 reads, "And Yahweh changed Yahweh's mind about the disaster Yahweh had planned to bring upon the people." Moses on the mic drop. Disaster averted. This text reveals an amazing characteristic of God. A God who enters into genuine dialogue with chosen leaders and takes their contribution to the conversation with utmost seriousness. This is a God who chooses not to act alone, but chooses to share the decision-making process with this human partner in the interests of honoring the relationship with Moses. God remains genuinely open to the future for an extended period of time. And so, following Moses' breakdown coming down the mountain and the subsequent destruction of the tablets, Yahweh says to the people, "Go." Kind of like, "Go, I've had enough of you. Leave this place, Sinai. Leave this place, you and the people who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, and go to the land that I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out those who live there." Do you remember the fall of 2020? September through November? Do you recall the chaos of COVID-19 uncertainty, an uptick in cases and deaths? Do you remember the racial upheaval and the political unrest as we approached an election? Do you remember how all those things converged and there was trouble in the wilderness? And as we labored under the fatigue of lengthy isolation, we added grand chaos to the cauldron of COVID. Conflict was the norm. The news brought zero sunshine, and the future seemed forever blemished. And yet, as was true for the Israelites, it is true for us. Our intimate God, so close that God invites conversations with us to hear and consider the future. Hear this. As was true for the Israelites, it is true for us. The movement from death to life occurs within the very experience of God forsakenness. Let me say that again. The movement from death to life occurs within the very experience of God forsakenness. Death is transformed into life within the death-filled context. The darkness is always darkest just before the dawn. We have been living through a dark hour. We have traversed through unfamiliarity and disorientation. We've moved on into recognition of providential blessing and a reordering of life, only to be recast into a deeper wilderness whereby the future seems lost, but it's not. If you're anything like me, sometimes you are just trying to get through one day. Manage the basics, put one foot in front of the other, and await the somehow, some way that God will make things better. And perhaps our best question at this point in the wilderness is, oh God, where are you and why are we in this place? And so I thank you for joining me, because we've been looking back in order to see what God has done, calling on God to be faithful to what we already know, that God is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. I commend you to your work. I thank you for your diligent study. Pray without ceasing. Listen deeply. Discern what God has done, what God is doing, and trust that God will see us through.